What's up, Brian? See, that one didn't run long at all, did it?
No, it did not. It did not.
You never know. You never know. What's
Never
up,
know.
everybody? Welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin, Robbie, Billups. This is the Brianiac. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You?
Doing great. Doing really great because we have a special guest here, and why even try to act like nobody knows who it is? So let's just go ahead and bring him in. But we're talking about the writer of the upcoming Dark Crisis. And y'all know me and how much of a mark I am for DC Crisis events. So this is kind of a big deal to me. I'm super excited. But we got the writer of Batman, Deathstroke Incorporated, Robin, previously The Flash, an amazing run on The Flash. And then indie-wise, let's talk about Ghosted, Nailbiter, Birthright. Really cool stuff. Everybody, give a big, mighty, hearty station to Joshua Williamson Station.
What's up, guys? How y'all doing?
We're doing good, J-Dubs. How you doing,
Good.
man?
Thank you for being here. I'm good. I'm just chilling, working. I got too much work to do all the time, but I can hang out and talk about comic books every once in a while.
Well, we appreciate you being here, buddy. Thanks for reaching out. I'm glad we got to make this work and have a conversation. Yeah. Like I let in with, I am a mark for DC Crisis books.
Me too.
All of them. I can imagine, right? So let's just go ahead and kick it off with that. Like, tell us a little bit about Dark Crisis. What is it, and why do we need another Crisis?
Oh, why do we need another Crisis? Well, all right. So Dark Crisis is about Justice League have died. There was this growing darkness brewing out in the multiverse. The Justice League went out to stop it. Pariah and this great dark army, and they died in the process. Pariah killed them. Black Adam was the only survivor, and he comes to Earth. He says, Justice League is dead. And we start to see how these characters on the DCU are reacting to that information. But at the same time, that dark army is still out there, and then Deathstroke is attacking with his army. And so we get to kind of have this moment where all of the new characters, I don't mean the new characters last like 5 years, I mean like the last 30 years worth of new characters, all trying to step up to basically save not only Earth Zero, but save the multiverse from all of these different attacks from different sides. That's what Dark Crisis is about. We can talk all kinds of stuff with it, and I can go deep into all kinds of things, and we can probably get a little bit of spoilers here and there. But, I felt like it was time to do something a little different with the Crisis, right? Like, doing a Crisis every few years is, like, embedded in the DNA of DC Comics at this point. It's like a piece of it, and with Metal and Death Metal, like both of those, like even Scott said, like he felt like Death Metal was an anti-Crisis, it was a little different. But we started having this conversation about doing maybe a year or two ago about doing an event at DC this year. And we kept talking about who was going to be in it. And I was like, well, I've seen an event from the Justice League's perspective. I've seen it from from Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. But I kind of want to see it from like the sidekick's point of view. Like we were talking before this started, like I started going to the comic shop all the time in like the early 90s. And one of the things that was really interesting about that time period at DC, it was really kind of this time of growth, right? Like the mythologies were all growing, the families were all growing. You had Tim Drake was showing up, and Connor, and the other Connor, Connor Hawk. You had Cassie, you had Kyle, like all these new characters are kind of getting added to the mythology at the same time. And so for me, as like a kid, really getting like hardcore in DC, it was sort of a way of like an entry point, into those worlds. Like with Green Lantern, I was already reading Green Lantern, but I hadn't been reading it like for years. I read it for maybe a year or two.
Yeah.
And having Kyle show up and being able to kind of like learn more about the Green Lantern mythology through a new character really made me like hooked. And it's one of the reasons why Kyle's like one of my boys, right? So all of those characters, dating back to then, I was like, let's do a story about them, not just them, but like all these characters have kind of popped up through. And there's some stuff coming up that are really fun throughout the book where you get to see different generations and different people you don't normally see together.
Yeah.
Like just now I was talking to Daniel, the artist, and there's this page in issue 4 where it's like Alan Scott and Nightwing and John and Yara, and they're going down these like dark, mysterious stairs together. And I was like, when have we seen that? It's like stuff like that. I was like, I really want to show characters we don't normally see together, and then have reasons why that kind of plays into the story. And I was talking to Jeremy Adams, who writes The Flash right now. We were talking about this earlier today because some of the Flash tie-in stuff that he's doing, he gets to show characters and different generations together that we haven't normally seen. That was really what it to me, dude, was like, I wanted to do a Crisis. I felt like we could do something a little bit different with it this time. And so that's kind of why.
Okay. Yeah. So I've actually gotten to read the first issue. Being
Yeah,
a
I wasn't sure
retailer.
if you read it or not.
Yeah, I got to read it, and the first thing I noticed, and obviously I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but
Yeah, sure.
it doesn't start like a lot of the other crises, my bad, that come in and it's just like balls to the wall. Like all the stuff has happened, all the lead up, Infinite Frontier, Justice League Incarnate, the death of Justice League, and it is very much a character focused first issue to me, which I thought like was very crazy. So would you say that this is more of a character oriented thing?
At first, like I definitely think the first 3 issues. I mean, okay, so I can break it down for you because I've studied all the events and I've like gone in there and I look at like if you look at Infinite Crisis, it has that moment with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman at the beginning, and it's a little more calm. And then it's like Mongol shows up, they fight Mongol, but then the Freedom Fighters are getting like ripped to shreds by the Secret Society, right? Like there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
With this, it's like our first issue definitely is a little bit of a slow burn where I wanted to show how these characters are reacting to the death of the Justice League, right? At one point, that issue, the Death of the Justice League issue, that was going to be number 1 at one point, and then we decided it was getting too big. So instead of it being like, because basically, if you imagine if Justice League 75 and Dark Crisis number 1 were shoved together, like it would have been so packed. So we broke them apart and we turned that into 75. And that's part of why some of the stuff is, this issue is a bit more of a slow burn. But then 2 is like a big fight issue. You got like Nightwing versus Deathstroke. You have John versus Cyborg Superman. There's other stuff going on. There's all kinds of fighting in that issue. But that issue is like balls to the wall action for a whole issue. And then there's like a really cool, I think, like, I don't know, the ending to issue 2 is a much more like uplifting ending. I think it's a more of a like, if you're a fan of DC, this is for you kind of ending. I think a lot of people will be happy with. And then 3 is a lot of action. There's a lot going on in action. There's some I don't want to say fucked up, but like there's some stuff in action that is definitely like going to make people talk. But then there's all of these like big moments in issue 3 that I think will make DC fans really, really happy. By the time we get to 4, I feel like 4 has a bunch of fighting in it. There's a big like set piece fight in 4 that kind of mirrors some of the set piece fighting we have in 2. Between 2 groups in the DCU. I don't get that's like too deep into spoilers.
Yeah.
But once we get to the end of 4, then it's just like boom, dude, it's nonstop after that. Like it is hardcore. Like 5, 6, and 7 are all just like a lot of big moments, a lot of action. Like you start revving up. If you go back and look at the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, I mean, it opens up with like the birth of the multiverse, and then you immediately see the death of the multiverse. It's like Pariah's watching all those worlds die. Like there's a similar like slow burn, like ebb and flow to that book, right? Like we're like ramp up and then it'll calm down, that ramps up and it calms down. Ours, I feel like it's just constantly ramping up, but at first you don't even notice it. Like it's just a gradual thing, and all of a sudden by the time we get to 4, you're just like, holy shit, is blowing up after that. Like then it just goes nuts.
Nice.
Like it gets. Yeah, I get nervous about this sometimes because like my impulse is to tell you everything. My impulse is like, oh man, here's this cool thing, here's this cool thing, But it's like I gotta restrain myself sometimes, I mean, earlier today I was talking to Jeremy Adams about the Flash stuff, and I like was showing him all the art for all of it, and he was blowing his mind with some of the stuff that's coming up. It's like a lot of like, there's definitely fan service stuff in there. Like I love DC Comics, so I know what will get me excited. Like that's kind of thing. Like we were talking before, like. There's different levels to me as a professional working in comics. Like I've never lost sight of the fact that I was still that person going into the comic book store every Wednesday, buying books, rushing home, flipping through it, looking for cool big moments. Like there's still that piece of me. And so when I'm working on this stuff, I always try to find those things that like me, when I was still just buying the books every week, what would get me pumped up.
Yeah.
And so I'm always trying to find that stuff in here. So but there is a lot of character stuff, like there's definitely quiet moments where the characters kind of get to connect in ways we haven't seen before. And then there's a bunch of big action. Like every issue I would say is kind of a balance. Like 2 is the most action. Well, 2 has the most like straightforward action. By the time we get to like 5, 6, and 7, it's just nuts, right? Like it goes pretty crazy by then. I'm worried about Daniel. Like at some point, Daniel's just gonna kill me. He's gonna be so pissed at me, because how these things go. Like eventually, it's just like a shit ton of characters,
Yeah, and
But,
Daniel's the artist of the book, right? Daniel Sam.
yeah,
Perry,
Daniel
right?
St. Pierre. Yeah, he's amazing. I mean, every time he's just going nuts on every page. Like he really wants every page to be like a work of art, this big crisis level piece. So it's really interesting with him. Like, I try to like every once in a while. This happened today. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna give you an easy page. Like, here's an easy, quote unquote, easy page, right? Like, it's not a page that's gonna kill you today. And then he'll turn it around, whatever. I look at it, and I'm like, "Yo, this was supposed to be the easy one. Like, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I wanted to draw this character, and so I did this." It's like a whole thing. But yeah, he's awesome. He's doing some. I mean, I've been a fan of his for a while. He's been around for a bit because he was even doing Injustice stuff with Tom. But
Okay.
he's been there. He's been at DC. I don't know, like at least 10 years at least. And he did this annual. When Scott and James were writing Justice League, there was an annual that was supposed to be like the Justice League and the Green Lanterns, and I forget who else was there, but they all went to the source wall for an issue.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that annual and being like, "This dude is dope. Like, we got to get him on something big. We got to get him on something big." And then he started doing a little bit here and there. Like he did Future State Aquaman. He was on Action Comics. Did this, and then when we started putting this together, one of the editors was like, "What about Daniel?" And I was like, "Dude, let's do it." And I was like, "Well, let me talk to him first." And then the moment I talked to him, I could tell, like, oh no, this dude gets it. Like, he also loves crisis events. He loves George Perez. He loves Phil Jimenez. We actually got to talk to Phil Jimenez back in December about some of our plans. Just like,
Oh, nice.
unloaded all the information on Phil to get Phil's take on it. And Phil had some really good like advice too on the whole thing and brought out some interesting points.
I'm sure he knows a thing or two about Crisis, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The first time I ever met Phil, I think actually, all right. So I've met Phil. This is a weird thing with me, I guess, is that like, I'd go to conventions when I was a kid, so I'd wait in line, get people's autographs and stuff. So I feel like I've met some creators twice, right? I've met them as a kid signing my books because I would have, I'd have Phil sign like my Invisibles trades and stuff, and then it's like there's that, and then there's the other version of Phil that I've met like as a professional. Like there was this. I think it was when we were planning. I'm trying to remember. I think it was when we were planning Metal. Like, or no, Metal had already come out, but like I went out to Scott's house. Like James and I went out to Scott's house, and we were planning out something. I think we were in the middle of Metal. We basically planned this like 4-year epic that we were doing that started with Metal and went all the way to Death Metal.
Yeah.
And even then, some of the stuff on that is still carrying over to the stuff I'm doing. And we had planned this whole thing out, but in the middle of all that, I was over at Scott's house and I brought my Absolute Infinite Frontier with me. So we were flipping through it, talking about stuff. We were talking about Superboy Prime a lot, and looking at like in the back of that, there's all of like their original plans for it, like broken up, what they were gonna do, and we were just talking about all of it. And then we started talking about Phil. We're just like, man, Phil is so good, dude is this amazing artist. And I was like, man, I have questions for him about Infinite Frontier. And then we went to the Titans premiere in New York. And he and I just happened to be at a little bar table together, and I was like, "Dude, can I just ask you a bunch of questions about Infinite Frontier?"
Infinite Crisis,
like,
right?
Yeah, Infinite Crisis. I'm sorry, Infinite Crisis. Yeah, and he was like, "Yeah, do it. Like, let's go." And so I started asking all these questions. Some of them were logistical stuff, and some of them was story stuff. But they were very candid and very helpful. I mean, they're a teacher. You could feel that immediately talking to them. But they really know their shit, and it's really interesting talking to Phil because it's like, Phil's been at DC for a while too and has his connection. So it's not just that he drew this book, like he knows it well, right? Like he knows it really well. And so talking to him this last time about Infinite Crisis, we got into this whole thing about Titans and like the history of Crisis and like stuff about the original Crisis. It was awesome. Even yesterday I was on the phone. We were doing a group call with some people and I was talking to Mark Waid and I was like, talking about some stuff with the original Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, it's so trippy sometimes to be like, talking to, some of these creators about this stuff. I try not to like completely nerd out every once in a while. Sometimes I'll say, fuck it. Sometimes I'll just go, whatever. Like, I have you here. We're going to talk about it, like.
Yeah.
One time I was with, we were at a summit and I was talking to Christopher Priest and I was like, yo, can I ask you a bunch of like Quantum and Woody questions? There's nothing to do with anything we're doing, but I want to talk about it. A couple years ago, I don't know when this was. I think it was like 2018, maybe 2000. No, it was like early 2019, I think. I was on this big like binge read of like everything Bendis did in Marvel, and so I was texting him one night. We were texting about something. I basically was just like, "Yo, can I ask you a bunch of like Secret Invasion questions?"
That's
And
hilarious.
I had all these questions, and then Brian was like, "No, we gotta talk about the stuff we're working on now." And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine, but I want to just talk about Secret Invasion for a minute." But yeah, it's still fun. But that's the thing with working on Dark Crisis. Like, I revisit the events all the time. Like behind my desk right here, I have all the events, and I have them little like post-it notes on which pages, so
Nice.
I can like go back and reference stuff and look at different things. And it's so funny. Like I in no way consider myself like a historian of comics. Like I would never call myself that. I've never considered myself that, because part of that is because I'll meet people who like know their shit, who like really know it.
Yeah.
And I remember one time talking to them. I'm like name dropping like crazy, but who cares?
Oh, we love that, man. I was about to be
Yeah.
like, Mark Waid is probably one of those people that like has such an encyclopedic knowledge.
Dude. Yeah, knows it, has lived it, and it's awesome. One time this is like 15, 16, maybe longer than that. I was at a convention hanging out with a bunch of creators. This is when I was a baby creator. I had like self-published, done a bunch of mini comics.
Nice.
And Brubaker was there, and we started talking about comic books and X-Men stuff. And I was like, I made some comment. I don't know. I was cocky, and I made some comment about like knowing the X-Men really well. And I was like, I know the first appearances. Brubaker started asking me all these questions, and I could not answer them. Like there were all these X-Men questions. And so Brubaker like legit like schooled me in the middle of the bar. So ever since then, I'm very particular of like, okay, if you're gonna say you know it, you better actually fucking know it. Like legit be on top of it, know it. I know some things really well, and I'll definitely like nerd out in a meeting and be like, well, actually, it's like this. I'll be like, But I've done it. I've definitely been that guy in the meetings and been like, no, it's actually like this, and I have to break down exactly why certain things are the way they are at DC. I've definitely been that person, but I'll never consider myself that. But it is funny, like every once in a while, like when we were doing some of the stuff on Justice League Incarnate, somebody wrote a whole article on CBR about how me and Culver, who co-wrote with me, we connected the Swamp Thing story to Crisis on Infinite Earth. And both Dennis and I were like, yo, that's on the fucking cover. Like, what are you talking about? We didn't connect anything. It literally
it's a Crisis crossover. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were like, I didn't connect anything to anything. It was literally.
I know that well because I'm like, man, they got Alan Moore to do a Crisis crossover.
Well, I was talking to James about this, and they were talking about how like it's like well known that Alan and Steve Bissett like were not happy about that. So it's like, that was part of their like conflicts with that story, is they were unhappy they were connecting. So I'm like, yo, there's plenty of evidence here that we did not connect it. That was already there. But it's like that kind of stuff that is like, it's really fascinating about, the historian of it all and the knowing everything of it all. And like, I definitely know a lot and I love the characters. But I always double check too. Like there was a thing, this happened today where it's, cause I'm leaving Robin. Like I said that a few days ago. I'm not sure if you know, but
I saw that.
I didn't know that. Oh,
I cried, but it's okay.
I love that book.
There's a lot of time we could talk about that some other time, but because I love writing that book. It's easily like some of the most fun I've had at DC. I do a flashback to an earlier issue, one of Grant's issues, and I do a flashback to it. And whenever I do a flashback to something, I go look it up and I make sure the dialogue, everything is exact. Right, like I don't fuck around with it. I make sure, boom, this is, if I'm doing a flashback to a scene from some other comic, I make sure it's there.
Yeah.
And proofreading, they were like, oh, there's a typo in here. There's a typo, and I was like, part of my brain was like, oh hell no, there isn't. Like it's exactly the same. And then I went and looked, and sure enough, I was in the wrong. And I was like, "Oh, cool. Like, thank you for catching that." Like, I was.
I thought you were about to say the typo slid in Grant's work, and you were like, "I don't care. We're gonna keep it exactly.
Keep the typo."
Nope, I was wrong. If it had been there, I would have fought for it. But no, it was me. I messed up. But that's my point, though. Like, I definitely double check everything. Like, I didn't argue with them. I wasn't like, no. I went and looked, and I was like, oh no, I messed up. Like, I messed up. So. Every once in a while, but yeah, I keep all the events. all the events are behind me. Anything that I'm working on usually is directly behind. I have to be careful sometimes because it'll spoil things I'm working on that aren't announced. But like my office is full of stuff
What
in
are you?
here.
Are you doing a preacher event? I mean, I'm trying.
Oh, you're seeing all the books over here? No, that's like a Vertigo. So this section over here is like a Vertigo section. So it's like Preacher, 100 Bullets, Why the Last Man. What else? There's Scalps is over here. You know, but there's all kinds. No, the stuff that's more secretive is on this side. That's why I'm like, I got to be careful with. I can't show you that stuff. But here's all the This is right behind me. Here is all the Absolute editions, and then over here is like flash trades. You can't see it right now, but right here there is a gigantic bookshelf that is just Batman. It's just Batman. That's the Marvel stuff is over here. You can't see the Marvel stuff's over here. The Image stuff is here. I got like a bunch more over here.
Well, we get it. You can't put the Marvel stuff in the background right now because DC is kind of your breadwinner right now, right? So we get it.
Because I do these calls with them, like whenever we do like fandom or whatever, like that kind of stuff, they want to make sure that there's nothing in the background, or anything. And I'm like, yo, I promise you, this is only DC back here. Like, it's okay. Like all the Marvels over
Excuse
here.
Excuse me, Josh. You got a Secret Invasion and a Secret Wars right back there. Could you an Infinity Gauntlet? Could you just move that?
Dude, I have. If you can't tell in this office right now, but I have a full on. I have the Iron Man helmet, the Spider-Man helmet, and I do have the Infinity Gauntlet, like right over here. You just can't see it.
Have you done work for Marvel at all? Because I can't think of it.
Yeah. Oh, but very little. I did. It was kind of funny. Like I did a book called Illuminati back in 2015. I did a couple what ifs for them. I've done a couple shorts for them. They were actually the first person to hire me. Was them. They gave me my first job, like job at Big Two. I had done like a bunch of little small stuff, and I'd done some Image stuff, but they were the ones that gave me my first like, here's your Big Two paycheck. And I actually got a check in the mail, had Spider-Man on it and everything. We took a picture, but they were the first ones that ever hooked me up with a job at the Big Two, and that actually helped me get work at DC at the time because they were like, "Wait, Marvel hired him? No." And like that was kind of the beginning of that, But yeah, there was a moment because I was at DC before for a few years, and it was rough. It was a rough time, and it was like 2009, 2012. And I wasn't like doing my best work, and so it didn't work out. Like I've talked about this publicly. This isn't like a secret. Like it didn't work out, and so I was gone from 2012 all the way until 2015. But in that time period, I worked at Boom, I worked at Dark Horse, I worked at Marvel. But that was really where like Nailbiter and Birthright and Ghosted came from. Was that time period? And I wasn't sure if I was ever going to come back to DC. I was like, I love those characters. I love that company. I just don't know if there's a home there for me. And then, Nailbiter and Birthright sold really well. And so they were like, well, let's give them a meeting. Let's talk about this. And I went and, dude, I told this story before. Do you know about this? Do you know about me pitching Dan the Flash and what happened?
No, I don't.
Oh, dude. All right. So
it's new to us, Josh.
So. All right. I will totally tell you what happened. So basically, I had this meeting with Dan that was set up. And I hadn't seen Dan in a while. I hadn't talked to Dan in a long time. And but I had this meeting with Dan. It was supposed to be on like a Saturday of San Diego Comic-Con at 3:30, and I was like, cool, great. And I had to go to this panel. It was an Image panel, and I told them, I'm like, I have to leave a few minutes early so I can make it to meet with Dan at 3:30. We were gonna go have a drink at like the Marriott or something. We had this whole plan set up, and I was gonna pitch him my Flash run. I had this whole idea for the Flash I wanted to do, but I was also like, that was it. I wasn't gonna do anything else. And but I was gonna go into it like, professionally, right? That was the plan.
Yeah.
So I'm on this Image panel and I get a text from Dan's assistant, and she's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "I'm meeting at 3:30. She's like, "No, you're meeting at 3." And I was like, "Oh, it's 3. It's like 3:05."
Oh man.
Wow.
And this is it. This is at San Diego Comic-Con, which is like, that's a big ass building. Right?
Yeah.
So I
thought it's hard to move around on a Saturday.
Dude, so I had to be like, okay, guys, I'm gone. Bye. And like Scott Snyder was sitting next to me at the panel. And I was like, dude, I gotta go. Bye. Took off. I'm wearing full black hoodie, all, like layers, right? I fucking take off running through the fucking convention center. I'm just like running, hauling ass, the whole thing. And I get over there and I can see Dan, I can see his assistant, I can see Fletch, who used to run like the convention stuff. And I'm running up to him, and I could see Fletch, who I'm friends with Fletch, and I knew him then. I could see Fletch was like, "Oh, you fucked up." Like he already had that face of like, "Dude, it's over." So I run over, and they're like, "Oh, here he is," and they're like, "All right, well, you can't go have drinks with him now. You have to meet him here." And I was like, "All right, whatever. What do we gotta do?" And they're like, "We're gonna put you in this little closet." They had so the way the booth is set up. I'm not sure if you've ever been to San Diego Comic-Con before, but the way the booth used to be set up was they would have these like little closets that would have like water, supplies, markers, pens. Somebody to leave their bag in there, but it's small, right? It's not a big room. And they're like, "You're gonna go in there," and they're gonna talk in there. And so Dan has me go in this little room, and we go into the corner. And I can tell Dan it's Saturday at San Diego Comic Con, so I can tell Dan is already like tired, right? And so I go in there and I start talking to Dan. He's like, "All right." He starts to pitch me. He's like, "Well, I want you to do Wild Dog." He was like, "How about you do a Wild Dog series?" And I was like, "No." I'm like,
Do you
"No,
think he
no."
uses that with everybody? He's like, "What about Wild Dog? What you got?"
Yeah. So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And then Dan is like, "Well, we're doing these one shots for Dark Side War, all this stuff." I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I was like, "I'm only gonna do the Flash." And I started pitching in my Flash thing. The thing is that I don't realize this until like I'm in the middle of it. Is that I just ran through the convention center, right? I am fucking bright red faced and sweaty like crazy. And now I'm so fired up from that experience. I'm like pumped up. I'm revved up. I am straight up yelling at Dan in this
You're
room.
like cutting wrestling promos. You're like,
Dude,
"Let me
no,
tell
for
you
real.
something, brother."
Dude, it was just like that. It was just like that. I'm like going at him about it. I know I was poking him. I know I was. And at one point, Dan is like you could tell he was like, "Whoa, we gotta stop." And I was like, "No, you're gonna listen to me." I just went to the I cut like you're saying, I cut like a full on Flash promo to him. And then Dan is like, all right. Can I give you notes? Can I give you notes? And I was like, "Yeah, of course. And now I'm starting to calm down. I'm starting to come down. And I'm like, yeah, of course, dude. Like, give me the notes, you know? He's like, "Well, first, no. Like, I'm not doing it." And then he gave me all these notes. He's like, "Here are my notes. Here are my thoughts on it." He gave me this whole thing, and we talked it out. By that point, I'm like, cool, but I'm still a little fired up, you know? I'm like a little fired up. I don't know how long I was in there with him for. I think I was in there. Well, I was in there with him right until the 3:30 time. What I found out was that, yeah, like there had been a miscommunication. My appointment with him was at 3. His appointment at 3:30 was with Scott. And I didn't realize like Scott was right behind us. And I didn't know, like Scott was in the room with us. And I didn't even realize it. I was so fired up. And I remember I turned around, Scott had this look on his face of like, what the fuck did I just watch? Like, was Josh gonna murder Dan in this little room? Because I was so pumped up. Well, so
He's
then
just
Dan
so
was
fearful for his life. He's like, "Oh man, I don't want to be a witness to this shit."
dude. So Dan is like, "No, whatever." They leave, and I was like, "All right, I feel good about this." Like looking back at it, I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking, but I feel good about it. But I took what Dan said, like the whole thing that Dan told me. I was like, all right, cool. And so then I go to New York Comic Con 3 months later. I go to New York Comic Con, and Dan, you know, I have a meeting with him. I'm early to this meeting.
Nice.
He comes in. He basically has like 15 minutes, and he's like, "All right, I know, you want to do the Flash." And I was like, "All right," but I thought about what you said, and I pitched him my story. And I remember Dan was like listening to it, and I got to the end, and he was like, "Done, we'll do it. Like, boom, let's go."
Nice.
And I was like, "All right, cool." And then I went down to LA a couple times, and one time I went down. I went into Dan's office to meet with him, just to bullshit with him for a second. It was about schedule. It wasn't about story. I went in, and he had like got a towel there, and he was like, "All right, this is for you in case, you know, you get too sweaty like on your way here." And I was like, "All right, I get it, dude, I get it." And then like 5 days after that, they flew me down. Like it was the day before Thanksgiving, and they flew me down to meet with Jeff. And I hadn't talked to Jeff in like, I don't even know, like 3 or 4 years, maybe, you know, maybe even 5 years. And they brought me in. That's when Jeff was like, "All right, let's talk about it." And we went to a whiteboard. We mapped out the whole plan. But yeah, that was the whole Flash saga. But yeah, it's me like yelling at Dan in a room.
That's hilarious.
And like, you know, freaking out on him. I saw Dan on Saturday. And we were talking about the same story again.
Oh, you're chatting to Dan as he's launching Frank Miller Presents. Interesting.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
no, dude, I'm
interesting.
exclusive to DC still. But like, you know, like
For how long though?
yeah. Please try to trap me. No,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Man.
I've known Dan for a while, so it's like it was just nice to see him and talk, catch up, and talk about comic stuff. We did talk about the Frank Miller stuff a little bit, but mostly just to see how pumped up Dan was, how excited he was about it. So that was really cool. It was a good time. It was good. Yeah.
Hey, Drew, actually a member of our Excitable PCP crew with a super chat. Thank you. Great interview.
Nice.
Glad to see everyone here. And Josh seems like a great dude and a great writer. Glad DC has given him the reins. Station. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. Your Flash run, I think, is exceptional. I love it. People all the time, they come in the shop and they're like, oh, I like Flash. Say I watched the show or something. What do I read? I'm like, oh, I think you should read Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, and Josh Williamson. I was like 100%. If you want Barry, read Josh. But, you know. And Jeremy's doing a really great job right now. And I hear that he's going to be tying in to what you're doing.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. I mean, his book, dude, is basically, Jeremy's doing an awesome job. I feel very lucky that the person following me on Flash is like kicking ass, you know? And yeah,
we were all worried, man. We were like, man, Williamson's leaving. Man, what's going to happen? And it blows me away. It's so solid. It's so consistent. Dude, I love it.
Yeah, he is nailing it. There's something about that character when people work on it. I think there's some kind of weird, I'm not sure what it is. Like, he has such a history of good writers, you know? Like, I would compare it to like Daredevil, you know, in a way. Like, there's no, you know, but you got, and you look at, you know, what Jeff and Mark did, because they're my favorite Flash writers, or them, you know? So you look what they do and what they did after, and what Mark did after and Jeff did after. Somebody else asked me about this at MegaCon. They were like, why is it that people work on Flash and then all of a sudden they always end up working on events at DC? And I was like, you know, I think it's something about like Barry and Wally, really, like their connections to the DCU, but their connections to events, you know, like with Crisis on Infinite Earth. I feel like when you're working on a Flash book, you kind of have to love DC, you know, you kind of have to know it really well. You have to have had those experiences. Like when I was talking to Jeremy today, he was saying the same things I was saying, where it's like we used to go to panels and watch Dan and watch, you know, Jeff and Grant and Mark and Greg, and, you know, talk about the books, you know. So I almost feel like when you work on that book, you kind of have to have that inside you somehow, you know. And, but yeah, Jeremy like knows it, dude, and it's been really great talking to him and working with him on stuff. Like, so yeah, Flash. In a weird way, I feel like Flash is like Dark Crisis number 1.5. You know, it's like it runs parallel through the first 4 issues of Dark Crisis, and then what happens in that story eventually meets back up in a big way to Dark Crisis.
And of course, because you got Barry's like a prisoner right now too, so I'm sure that Wally's trying to figure out where he is.
Yeah, that's what happens. I mean, I've already talked about this. I don't think it's a spoiler or anything. It's like basically in Dark Crisis number 1, Black Adam. Well, so Hal Jordan returns to Earth and he finds that the Justice League are gone, and he asks, like, you know, Wally and John, like, what's happening? They take him to Black Adam. Black Adam gives the whole speech of like, here's what happened. Basically, what happened in Justice League 75. Here it is, and he's like, but the darkness has been halted, and the Justice League died. I witnessed it. And Hal Jordan is just like, bullshit, no way, you know. And Hal is like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. You know, he asks Wally, he's like, what would Barry do? He's like, well, he would look for the evidence. He'd look for the crime scene. He's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. He's like, you to Wally. He's like, Wally, you are going to go look for Barry. Like, figure out what happened. Go out in the multiverse and find Barry. Because Barry's obviously tied to this stuff. He's like, I am going to go look for the Great Darkness, look for Pariah, look for the Army, because they've got to still be out there. So he's like, I'm going to go look for the perp. You go look for the evidence. Let's go. Right?
Yeah, because they think that they think that it's over, maybe. Right?
Yeah.
Like Black Adam's like, oh, we stopped it though. Don't worry. They died, but yeah, we stopped it. No.
Well, the thing, like John and them are kind of like, there's no guarantees that that's over, right? Like, what if it shows up? What if it comes back and that becomes more and more apparent, of course, of it? And there's, you know, the Deathstroke stuff that's going on. Like, there's a lot that sort of builds. And Black Adam has a lot of, I guess I'll say, learning to do. You know, like he has Black Adam has a really strong, like, emotional arc across the whole thing. I mean, so does Nightwing, so does John, you know, so does Wally, so does Hal. Like, they all have these, like, emotional things I was trying to do with them across the issues. But Black Adam's attitude of just, like, you know, not only did the Justice League die, but he thinks that, like, nobody on Earth is at their level, right? He's just like, nobody here. I mean, you've read the issue. I mean, straight out is like, you guys suck. I mean, that's pretty much. And he has that kind of attitude through a lot of it, and that leads him down some interesting paths. And I think there's an interesting like emotional arc with Black Adam through the story. But yeah,
cool.
Wally takes off, and that's the Flash book. Like he goes over there, he gets the Flash family together, he gets Jay Garrick and Max Mercury and Jesse Quick, and he's like, let's go find Barry. And they go on this adventure to find Barry. Oh, and Wallace goes too, which that's important for the book. But yeah, they all go on this adventure. And then obviously it's something. One thing that's funny about event books and doing DC books or just these kinds of books is that like the covers sometimes get out there before the books do, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like there's this thing we talk about, like a bunch of us writers, where it's like if your last page is a reveal of a character, but that character's on the cover of the next issue, right? Like that's kind of rough.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is it's not about the reveal of the character, it's what the character is doing. Like, what are they up to? That's the stuff that you hold. So you can show that character. Like, we did this on Flash, where we were doing this story on Flash called Perfect Storm. And it was going to be about, like, answering how the lightning storm, the Speed Force storm had happened in issue 1, like, what had happened. It was always intended to be Gorilla Grodd. And I was like, all right, can we just, like, not have Gorilla Grodd on any of these covers? Because if he's not on these covers, then when he shows up, it's a surprise. And this was a double ship, dude. Double ship was a beast. Like that was like an intense thing for many years in my life. It was like no matter what, 2 issues of Flash are coming out, all almost 5 years.
Yeah, that was insane. That you stayed consistent on that schedule, man. It's wild.
Dude, it was nuts. I don't even know how, and I was still working on other stuff at the same time. Like I don't know how we did it sometimes. I don't think I could do it now. But I was like, yo, can we not have Gorilla Grodd on the covers? And they were like, dude, you cannot. Like, there's no way you can keep Gorilla Grodd off this many covers. You have to put him on the cover. And they're like, it's a big deal. It's Gorilla Grodd. You got to put him on the number 1 cover, or the first part. I was like, I'm gonna haunt on. But then I was like, well, we could put Gorilla Grodd on the cover. I think that's a good idea. We just don't say what's going on, right? Like, and we were gonna reveal in the issue that he was dying, and he had built this army. So we're like, all right, don't reveal that he's dying. Like, that's the twist. Like, people are going to know it's Gorilla Grodd, but he's sick and dying. He needs to steal the Speed Force to live. Like, that's the stuff we keep secret. But that's the stuff with Dark Crisis. Like, I get real... It's hard because you're like, oh, I want people to get excited about the book. So I'm like, just put it on the cover. You know, like, get it out there. Get people knowing what the book is about. You know, this thing is coming. Like, you know, this reveal is happening. Just get it out there.
Yeah, you called that whole issue, that one issue, The Death of the Justice League. You were like, let's just fucking spoil it on the cover. Right there.
I know. Yeah. It's like, just get it out there. But there's also that part of me that like wants you to actually read it and be surprised, you know? So it's like, I kind of engineered it so every issue has like 2 things going on. One thing we spoil, one thing we don't. Like one thing we keep tight. And it's cool. Like, it's funny because I'll be talking editorial and they'll be like, oh, we're going to put this person on this cover. And I'm like, no. Like, put this person on that cover. This one I'm okay revealing. Don't reveal this person. Don't reveal this twist. You know?
That's cool.
Yeah, excited to know we got some surprises. Ken's got a super chat. Says Green Arrow next, please. And I want to personally thank you in the pages of Robin for bringing Connor Hawk back in full capacity. Yeah, dude. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I love Connor. Green Arrow. There are plans for Green Arrow. That's the most I can tell you. I love Green Arrow. It's one of my favorite characters. I've told this story a few times where it's like for years, when I was at DC before, back that time period, the 2009, 2012 time period, you know, there's a lot of characters I love. You know, I wanted to work on Batman. I wanted to work on Flash. But Green Arrow was the other one. And I used to pitch Green Arrow stuff all the time. Like, I'll just show you, not in this office, but in my old office, I had like a huge ass like Green Arrow display. Like, I have a Darwin Cook Green Arrow original over here. Like, I love Green Arrow.
That's great.
And yeah, dude, it's awesome. And I have all kinds of Green Arrow stuff. And he's one of my favorite characters. And every time I would pitch him, it wouldn't work out. Or even if I was working on something else, I would be like, oh, can I put Green Arrow on this? And they'd be like, no. So this went on for a while. The first time I actually like really got to write Green Arrow for a whole issue when something happened, I killed him.
I know. I was about to be like, that's the best. You know, you killed the Justice League in that one issue, and the one that has the most emotional impact is Ollie's death, man. Like,
that's because
wow.
That's because I love him so much, and so there's all kinds of stuff. I have to be careful because I'll just spoil shit by accident, like I was saying before. But you know, like, listen, there are Green Arrow plans, and I think if you're, you know, like, I definitely have stuff I want to do, and I think you'll be fine by the time we get there. You'll be happy.
Like, yeah.
there's definitely some emotional stuff, and it's always a roller coaster ride. But yeah,
We got Joe saying what's up to you. Joe
What's up, dude?
Corallo, friend of the show. And
Nice.
Sleepy Reader 666, a good friend Damian, says Birthright was perhaps the greatest epic fantasy in comics all the way through to a wonderfully constructed ending.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot because that was 50 issues long, and we really mapped it out. We really planned out, what we wanted to do with that book for 50 issues. And it was really, yeah, man, like that book was intense too. That was the hardest book for me to write for a long time. Like
Really?
Nailbiter was easy. Like once I could hear Warren's voice in my head, and also Nailbiter was like, all right, all I gotta do is make sure it's scary. Like that. I write with notebooks a lot. Like that's how I write comics. And I have like a whole system. With Nailbiter, I'd have a notebook and I would write out what was gonna happen every issue. And I always had a note I wrote myself every time. I was like, where's the scary? Like where's the scary stuff at? And then also Mike and I were always trying to like freak each other out, So I would always be like, all right, I know Mike, certain things freak Mike out. Like anything with eyeballs freaks Mike out. So I was like, I'm gonna write an eyeball scene, like we're always trying to gross each other out. So that book was like fun. And also Nailbiter was built to be like a grindhouse Penny Dreadful, just fucking fun, quick thing. Birthright, on the other hand, was a deeply personal book. And yeah, it's fantasy, and fantasy you don't want to like cop out, because fantasy readers, I think they'll call you out on it, It's different. I think horror fans, we have a bit more of a like, it's okay if it's a little messy, as long as it's fun. I think fantasy fans, a lot of times, you can see with like Lord of the Rings and stuff, when they get deep into that mythology, they will get you if you mess something up. And so at Birthright, it was intense to write that one, and that was the thing, even the construction of it. But thankfully, like I always knew where I was heading with it. Like I always knew, like I knew every year, every arc, I knew what I wanted. I knew where I wanted all the characters to end at. There was a couple things that popped up through that book. Like there was a couple characters that I would come up with while I was writing, and then I'd be like, well, I really like writing this character. And then they became more and more important. Like there's a guy in the book who eventually becomes a werewolf in the story. And like that dude was not intended to be a main character. He was supposed to be just like a throwaway. But then he just became like a big deal. And I felt like he became part of like the family. But it just took, with that one, I always knew how it was going to end. Like that last sequence, I always knew I was going to get there to that. So it was all about driving to that and just having, like, thankfully Skybound, they let me have 50 issues. And so I got to really let it breathe. Like
so that was
every
from
issue.
The beginning, you were planning, like, I want to do 50. Like, and I'm going to hit that.
Yeah, we knew. I mean, normally, here's the thing. Like, when I'm talking to people about breaking into comics and trying to write comics, like, one of the things that we pitch is, like, never pitch a 50-issue epic fantasy thing. Never pitch that, right? Don't do it. And to this day, I'll tell people that. Well, so we were, what were we doing, dude? We were, I was at WonderCon. So I was at WonderCon. It's 2013. I was working on Ghosted. I was like Nailbiter was starting to get going. I was doing some stuff for different publishers. I was working for Dark Horse and Boom and Sean Makowitz, who at the time was an editor. He's still like very high up at Dark Horse, or at Skybound. But at the time, he was an editor, and he and I were like walking around, bullshitting around WonderCon, and we went to. It might have been. I can't remember. I think it was Golden Apple. Like we went to this Golden Apple booth, and we're just like, going through the bins, flipping through, looking at books, talking. And we started talking about fantasy stuff. And I was like, oh, I have this fantasy pitch that I want to do. But I was like, like it's kind of complicated. It's not an easy pitch. Like that was the thing I told him. I was like, not an easy pitch. Like Nailbiter, I feel like I can do like that. Ghosted is easy, I was like, this one's kind of tough. And he's like, oh, what is it? And this is like me. Now I'm not talking to the editor. I'm just talking to my buddy. And I was like, oh, it's this thing. And I explained it to him. And he was like, oh, that's cool. That sounds pretty cool, I was like, yeah, but it's like this 50-issue epic fantasy thing. And I like broke it down for him. I'm like, I have a whole plan for how it like actually goes across all 50. It's still loose in places to where I can play if I need to, but I have this epic plan. And then like a week later, dude, I was napping. I remember this. I was on my couch, like passed out. My phone rings. I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, we want it. Like, we want to do Birthright. And I was like, what? He's like, we want to do the whole thing. We want to do all 50 issues, this whole plan. Can you come down to LA and spend like a couple days here with us and we'll map it out and talk about it. And I was like, yeah, cool. And when I went down there, we actually didn't talk that much about the 50-issue plan. It was more about notes and thoughts they had about like the grounded of it, like the actual root of the story. And so I went down there and we talked about the root of the story and how it was going to play out. And then a couple years later, we were at Disneyland actually, and Makowitz and I went to Disneyland, and we went as like a story thing, to like talk about story while we're waiting in line. Like, let's do something different. Like, instead of sitting in a room, you know, with a whiteboard, let's do something different. And I was
That's
like,
a really good way to kill the time waiting in line at a theme
yeah,
park.
yeah. So we were actually in line for the Haunted Mansion when I like broke down the whole ending to Birthright for him. I was like, here's how the whole like last sequence of events goes. So I was like, if anybody was in line for Haunted Mansion in November of 2015, they got the whole thing spoiled for them. Like, they heard
like,
the
what
whole
are these
thing.
fucking nerds talking about over
Dude,
here,
yeah.
man?
Yeah, it's all
Fanfic or
emotional.
something? What the hell's
Yeah,
going on?
we're talking about this like super emotional story. That trip was weird because when we were in line for Space Mountain was when I got the email from Marvel, my last Marvel job, and they were like, we want you to do Haunted Mansion. And I was like, because I had basically been trying to pitch Haunted Mansion to Disney Publishing for years. And Marvel, I didn't know that well, but this is the funny thing. You were talking about the stuff in my office before, right? Like, you can't tell, but over here on this side, my old office it was more obvious, but I have a ton of like Haunted Mansion merchandise and like stuff, just stuff. You know, I got the giant plaque and everything. Like, I have a ton of Haunted Mansion stuff. And so I did an interview with somebody at Marvel for like a book announcement or something, and he was like, it was one of the marketing guys, and he was like, "Oh man, you love Haunted Mansion stuff?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, dude, that's like one of my jams. Like, I love Haunted Mansion. Anything with it. If like I've definitely gone to Haunted Mansion. I've gone to Disneyland before at one of the anniversaries and walked out of the park with just like bags of shit. One time I was in Anaheim, I had a season pass. I literally went into the park just to go on that ride one time and then walked out because the Hatbox Ghost had just premiered. I just was like, I just want to see it, and then I gotta go do shit. Like, I had a signing to go to, so I'm like, all right, I timed it where I'm like, all right, I had a signing like a couple blocks away from Disneyland, so I was like, all right, I can go on run ride and then get out.
Nice.
So somebody at Marvel, so that guy, I heard the story from Axel Alonso. That basically what happened was, they finally were like, all right, cool, I think we're gonna do a Haunted Mansion comic. And so that guy from marketing was like, whoa, like, if you do it, just Josh Williamson, like, he loves it. And I already started working at Marvel at the time. I was doing little stuff, so they're like, you should just get him. Like, I did like a Secret Wars miniseries, all that stuff, but they were like, yeah, get Josh. And Axel said that when he called Disney and he was ready to go, like, normally they bring like lists of people, you know. When he called Disney to be like, all right, cool, we're ready to talk about Haunted Mansion, Disney said, oh, we want Josh Williamson to do it. Like, they told him, and so he was like, this is the easiest thing we've ever had to deal with. Like, yes, let's go.
Like,
so they
do you realize how much this guy's been on Haunted Mansion? He's the one.
Yeah, I was it. It was fun though.
He's been on that ride 69 times, man. Like, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, you should have said 999 times and make it all fun. But anyway, yeah.
I've never been to we're closer to Disney World, but I've never been to any of that stuff. So did you actually did the Haunted Mansion series?
Yeah, dude, it was awesome.
See, bro, I bought every issue of that, right? Every issue, because I collected the action figure variants, right?
Oh yeah, dude,
so I bought every single one, never read a single one of them, and then I sold them. I didn't even know it was you, bro. Now I'm gonna have to go find them and read them.
They're hard to rebuy them, dude. Even the trades are hard to find. They're out of print.
I'll figure out a way.
Wild, dude. You've never been to Disney World before?
No, I haven't. I'm sure Brian has, but I haven't.
Yeah, Haunted Mansion is the best ride there.
Dude, Rob, we gotta get you down there.
A lot of fun. Yeah,
I am. I don't want to go too on this tangent, but I'm obsessed with amusement parks. Like, we'll talk about this sometime, like offline. I'll tell you a whole other thing. But like, I'm obsessed with amusement parks. Like, and so I grew up in California, so I used to go to them all the time. And I think about it with comics all the time, because it's like, the moment you walk into an amusement park, if it's a good one, their job is they're trying to immerse you in that world, but they're trying to tell you a story. Especially Disney. Like, every time you go to anything in Disney, they're like, we're trying to tell you a story, you know? And I always find that really fascinating, like that idea of that. How do you apply that to comics? Like, every part of, you know, because I think now, when I think about comics now, it's more than just a book. And like, when people ask me questions sometimes about this stuff, I'm like, well, you should read the book. Like, go to your comic shop, pick that book up and read it. But even that right there, like, it's not just about that book anymore. It's about the whole experience. You know, it's about going to the shops, about talking to, you know, you, and like talking about the books. It's about flipping through the books. It's about going online. It's about all of it. Like, you know, I always find it fascinating now how much of it is just a big experience. You know, it's more than just me. I don't know. Like, I think that's part of the fun of comics, dude. You're not going to just read your book and do nothing else. Like, you want to read it and then talk to your buddies about it.
Yeah.
You want to go to the comic book store and be like, you know, what's up? What's the good, right? Like, what's the good book I got to pick up? You know, I'm a big advocate for people going to their shops, pre-ordering, buying books, because we were talking about this before we started recording, that like I'm always going to be that guy in my head, like working at the shop, selling books. Like that's always in like, how do I get them to want to go into a comic store and buy it and then want to talk about it?
And
like,
it makes you feel good. It makes you feel good when you get people turned on to a book and you sell out of something.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to announce that we sold out of the newest Shaolin Cowboy at the Deep today, and I was super excited. Dude. I like did fist bumps in the air. I was like, yes. Jeff Darrow's got like 20 new fans, man. That they're just like new people that I got in on that book. So I'm super pumped.
Dude, that's always fun. Go ahead,
Brian, it's your bit now. So
what do you need from me?
It's the Brian bit, bro.
What do you need, buddy?
I did have a couple things. I did read Nailbiter. I do want to read Birthright. I haven't gotten to that, but I thought you nailed the ending for Nailbiter.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
I was, I don't know. It was hard to put it down. You know, I had it digitally and everything like that. So like I consumed that really quick. But I did want to ask about the issue with Brian Michael Bendis and
dude,
how did that come about? Because like I was crying laughing so hard because you even had the 16-page. 16 panel spreads with all the heads and everything.
Yeah. So, all right. So what happened was, man, all right. I had to like go back in time in my brain for a moment. All right. So I was a big fan of Powers, and I was a Bendis person. I feel like it's so silly to say this, but I was a Bendis person like the day before he blew up. Right, like I was big time into like Jinx and Torso, partially because Sam and Twitch. Like when Sam and Twitch came out, that's when I started. I was like, this book is dope, you know. And I was like, what else does he do? And I was working at a comic book store, so it was easy to go grab stuff. And you know, and then boom, like Ultimate Spider-Man starts. Like I think it's like Powers then Ultimate Spider-Man, right? But it's like boom, this guy blows up. So I would go to conventions and go up to him like we were talking before. I'd go to him and I'd hassle him and you know, be like, sign my books, you know, talking about stuff and bullshitting with him. But I was always at convention, so I'd run into him constantly. And then when I moved to Portland, you know, there's like a comic scene in Portland, Oregon, and like Valentino introduced me to Brian again. You know, it's one of those things where it's like I've met him a couple different times. Well, so then I was in his writing class. Like he has a comic book writing class here in Portland, and I was in the very first round, 2010. I was in that class, so I got to know him through that, just talking about stuff. And we'll text every once in a while, and like, you know, I go to his house and hang out. Well, so we were working on Nailbiter, and I was trying to figure out something I wanted to do. I wanted to do something different. Well, way back when Powers was happening, issue 7 of Powers had Warren Ellis in it. Like he came in and was like the guest star of it.
The ride-along issues.
The ride-along issue. Well, this continues. Right. It's kind of crazy because I basically was like, yo, can I do a ride-along issue? So I went to Image first, and I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Are you cool with it? And they were like, if Brian's cool with it, go for it. So I emailed Brian at like 2 a.m. because this is back in the day. Like Brian used to keep crazy hours. So like notoriously would keep crazy hours. So I emailed Brian. And I gave him the spiel, like, listen, man, you know, I love you. You know, I got this idea. Can I put Bendis, you know, I could put you into Nailbiter? And he wrote back immediately. He was like, let's do it. You know, and he had some thoughts on it. One of the things that was really funny is he was like, you have to put a disclaimer in there saying that you don't own me. He was like, that's real. Because he was like, you know how it works. Because like, you know what I mean? Like Nailbiter, you know, it's like I don't own his likeness somehow. Right? Like I don't own his comic book likeness somehow. He's like, I gotta put a disclaimer in there. And I was like, all right, I got it. And so then I would just email him like, here's what I'm thinking about doing. And because I was such a like, you know, a student, I was literally a student of his, but even before that I would read his stuff, you know, and like I did that thing where I reread all of it. I reread all of his stuff again during the pandemic. And I remember talking to him on the phone and I was like, yo, I just reread all of Daredevil and all of Ultimate Spider-Man. And he was like, well, how was it? And he's like, no, don't tell me. Like, I don't want to know. He was like, does it hold up? And I was like, dude, they both hold up really well. Like Daredevil, like surprisingly, like I was like, holy shit, this book like hardcore. Like a new appreciation of it holds up. You know, like I got some certain stuff I remember being like iffy on when I was younger. This time around, I was like, "Yo, this is dope, dude! Like, this is amazing." So I gave him a whole thing. But so basically, yeah, I wrote that issue, and then we kept going back and forth on, and then we showed it to him, and he was cool with it because I kept being like, "Oh man, am I pushing this too far? Like, am I pushing this too far?" Originally, we were gonna have him die at the end, and then we decided to change it and have that ending where he's at the signing and you know somebody's watching him, whatever. We changed it. About a year after that issue came out. Oh no, yeah, about a year. I'll say a year after that issue came out. I was at an Image party, and I ran into Brian K. Vaughan. And Brian K. Vaughan is also somebody I've known for a while, and he knows how much I love his work. With him, I remember way back when I was in line to meet Scott Doombear at Wildstorm at the time. He's at IEW now, but at the time he was at Wildstorm. And I wanted to meet him, so I'm in line. There's this guy in front of me in line, and we started like bullshitting and talking, you know, and talking about comic books. And yeah, I really want to meet Scumbeard too. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like an indie guy. And he's like, oh yeah, I've done some stuff. And I'm like, cool. We give it to Scott Doombear, and he pulls out his business card, and it's Brian K. Vaughan. And I remember it was very humbling in a moment to be like, oh, that's right. Like, and at that point, he already had White Last Man. Like this is really early. Like his business card had the hood on it from Marvel.
Nice.
The hood. So this is like really early on. Like I think White Last Man had like just come out, just come out when this happened. But it was definitely an eye-opening moment for me to be like, oh man, like even when you're like the guy, you know, sometimes you got to find yourself waiting in line to meet an editor. Like it was sort of I mean, I don't think Brian K. Vaughan ever has to wait in line for anybody ever again at this point. But in that moment, it was definitely like a learning experience. But anyway, so I ran into Brian at a convention party. It was an Image party in San Diego. I ran into him and he stopped me and he was like, dude, that Brian, that Bendis issue is so funny. He was like, that is Brian. He's like, you somehow nailed his voice in that issue. And I was like, dude, I was in his class. We were in his class like twice a week for whatever it was, like 12 weeks, however long it was. You just hear it enough, you know, you're just like, oh, I can do this.
I get the sense that does he talk like a Bendis character? I get like does that?
No, he doesn't. I mean, I definitely like embellished that part of it to like make it so it was a mix of actually thinking I know Brian says, and then turning it into one of his characters. Like that I used to like send emails to him back in the day, like in the Jinx and the Caliber days and stuff. Like me too, dude.
Yeah, when he was in Cleveland, and and I never met him in person. The one time I was going to go meet him, he had to cancel. I think it was when this was like 2002, so I think he had something happen or something, right? But I did get to meet Michael, Avon Oming, and David Mack, and all them, and Alex Maleev, and dude, I used to just. I did a top 5 video for Bendis recently because I was like, you know, a lot of people are saying that they don't like his recent work or whatever, but I'm like, y'all need to understand this dude was game changing when he came in. His stuff,
he's a legend.
His dialogue, oh my goodness. And he got me into Aaron Sorkin because he used to always do that the bit. Yeah, the shit that he would do at the at the end of Powers, where he would talk about what he's been reading and listening to, and I was like, I got into Sports Night, I got into all that stuff.
Yeah, dude,
man. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big influence on me, but that's the thing is that I love name dropping, I don't even care. So
we love it too, bro. Do it, man.
So MegaCon, I think it was at the table with us, but it was like me and Tom King, it was Culver again, and Rom V. And we were having this whole conversation. We started talking about Bendis, and we were just like, yo, like, it is inescapable. If you go back to the early 2000s, everybody ripped Brian off. Like, like so many new creators that were coming in, they were just ripping Brian off like crazy. You get around like 2005, and it was like every new creator, like, worshipped Brian, you know, and you could see that. And it's like, it's undeniable that dude is a legend. And if anybody doesn't like his stuff now, I mean, you got to read like Batman Universe. Batman Universe is dope. Like, that book is so good with him and Darrington.
That is so good.
Yeah, so
that's
good.
My favorite work of his at DC that he did was that. Like, I love that book. I think it's amazing, bro.
Yeah.
I also liked Cover. Oh my goodness, Cover's
real good.
Exceptional.
Yeah, Cover's really good. I think that's knowledge, right? Like, that's out there that they're making like an animated thing of that, right? like him and David Mack. They're doing like HBO Max, or they've been working on it. I think that's out there. I think
I've heard
public.
something about that.
I hope the shit.
Yeah,
I'm like positive because I know he's
PCP exclusive. Everybody.
Yeah, I know. I think he talked about it in his newsletter. Oh, dude, Brian would text me. He'd be so mad. I like told his shit. Oh my god. Well, Brian, what other questions you had? You said you had a few.
Well, I just kind of a general thing about callbacks, because you were talking about fan service, and one of my favorite bits in that Justice League Incarnate is when President Superman like recreated this cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, do you have like a target for doing that, or is it just like as you're kind of developing the story, you're like, oh, this would be a good place to squeeze something like that in? Or
it's tough. Yes. So like, I'll give you an example. Was that like, well, I guess I can't give this example. I don't know. I feel like there's a certain time period where I read pretty much all the books, right? So you're talking about from like, I would say like 90, probably until 2008, 2009, I was reading everything, just everything that was coming out. Anything DC Comics, I read all of it. And then around then, I started going back and checking stuff out. So a lot of those visuals are just in here, you know? And so it's like, I know when I'm like, okay, cool, I want to do it like this because of this iconic image, you know, this iconic moment. I definitely go back to that as a frame of reference. It's just in my head, you know? And like I said, I have stuff right here, so I'll double check it sometimes, you know? Like, you know, sometimes my own headcanon. The only time I've ever got it wrong, I think, in terms of my own headcanon and where I went to print was like when it was in Robin, and there's a scene where they're talking about there was a scene where they talk about Damian slicing Tim Drake's throat. And I said that scene in Robin, and then one of the editors called me and was like, when did that happen? I'm like, what happened in this issue of Batman? And I went back and I looked, and he doesn't slice his throat, but it's like really bloody, like he hits him with what do you call it? Knuckles, brass knuckles that have spikes on them, you know? Right? And he gets him. And you don't see it. You don't see how bad it is. But then in the next issue, Alfred is like, oh, he lost a lot of blood. He's barely alive. And I'm like, yo, he got him good. We just didn't see it.
Are you talking about the Morrison issues where like Tim's like at the bottom of the Batcave and like, oh yeah.
In my brain, I was like, oh, he got him real good. But
when I was first introduced to Damian, I was like, I hate this fucking kid so much. Oh my God. And then Grant's whole story with Damian is beautiful. And then I think you have been the best voice for that character since Tomasi and Morrison.
Yeah.
Like I love.
Oh, for sure.
I love your run, man.
Yeah, Tomasi, he knows it, dude. Like, he knows him and John so well. And it's like, you know, you go back. I have that omnibus right here. I think it's
that's nice.
Yeah, I have the Batman and Robin that Tomasi did with him and Gleason. Like, you know, he knows it really well. And it's like, like, Damian is like my little baby boy, you know? Like, I kind of keep him close as best I can. And I'm definitely like, it's really weird. Like, leaving Robin was a really hard decision. But it was also just like looking at the map of everything we were doing, looking at my own schedule. I was like, man, I gotta figure some stuff out, because like Dark Crisis, like we're almost done, but it's like it's intense, right? You know, like making sure we get it right, make sure we get the ending right. And then I'm already working on my stuff for 2023, and it's like I'm working on the DC stuff for 2023 and like our plans and the books I'm gonna do. But I also have creator own stuff I want to do. And so I was looking at it, and like there was a thing, man. So in May, right now, like we're in May right now, I had 8 books come out from DC this month. 8.
Yeah.
And so I had this dude, I was like, I have to stop because I'm going to burn out. Like, I can feel it, you know, I'm like, I'm getting close. So I looked at everything and I was like, all right, cool. You know, like I'm not, you know, like Batman's done. DEATHSTROKE Inc. is done. All right. Maybe I should leave Robin now. And it was tough. Dude. I was even talking about the editor about it this morning. And we both were just like, man, it's hard to leave that book. Like, cause I love those characters so much. And yeah, like Tomasi's voice for that character is really strong. I just like that character. I've never not liked him, you know, like I know there are people that have had issues with him. Like you were saying, you didn't like him. I hear that all the time. People are like,
it was only at first. It was only at first.
Yeah.
To me, Tim, I think me and you were like in comics getting into it around the same time. But like, to me, Tim Drake is my Robin, you know, and I still think he's the best one. He's the one that figured out that Bruce was Batman. He's the first Robin to wear pants. Like, I mean, come on.
That is a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, I don't know. Retrofitting, they all wear pants now, but
but we know the truth.
We know the truth. Yeah, of course. Oh, dude, I try and sneak the shorts in all the time, and sometimes we get away with it. But I mean, James. James is one of my closest friends. I talk to that dude all the time, and he was a big Tim Drake person too, and like advocate for that character.
I can tell his Detective Comics run is the best Tim Drake story I've ever read.
Oh
my goodness,
dude, it's so good. Like he had a whole. He had a plan, and it was all through Tim Drake. Like that was his plan. And when I got to do Damian, I've been asking for it for a while because, like, again, I actually wrote an issue of Superman Batman back in 2010 that had Damian and Supergirl in it, and I had so much fun doing that issue. And so I was always asking about Damian. I was like, "Can I write Damian? Can I write Damian?" I kind of gave up on it at some point because it's like once you're doing Flash, you're doing all these events. But what happened was, like, when I was wrapping up Flash, I had this conversation with Marie Javins, and we knew. So I was wrapping up Flash, but we knew I was going to work on like Infinite Frontier. We knew I was going to work on some stuff. And Marie Javins was like, it was actually the day. Oh yeah, it was the day Flash ended. So my last issue of Flash just come out, and I was like, what am I doing next? It's like we knew I was going to work on event stuff. What else is it? Can't just be that. What else is it? And she was like, you got to do something that surprises people. You can't just go dive into another superhero book that's the same. You got to do something else. And so I was like, all right, well, what is there? What's something different? And I was going to do Rogues. Like I was already writing Rogues.
Oh, fantastic book, by the way.
I love
my
that.
goodness.
By the way.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Well, basically, yeah, they basically were like, what do you want to do? And then one of the editors was like, what about Damian? What about Robin? And I'm like, dude, let's do it. Because I love that character. Let's go.
You played it cool though. You were like, oh, I don't know, Damian.
No, I'm never that guy. I'm never that guy, dude. I never play it off. I probably played my cards way too early sometimes. That stuff, like they know when I'm excited about something. I can't hide it. Like I don't be like, oh, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
because you're like, brother, let me tell you, Damian Wayne.
Yeah, dude, I'll do it. But yeah, Rogues came about because when I was on Flash, really early on. Like I think like issue 1 had come out. We were talking about the Rogue story we're gonna do, and I was like, all right, I have a plan. Here's what I want to do for the Rogues. And it was like the Rogues are gonna go, rip off Gorilla Grodd. I had this whole thing. And they were like, well, here's the thing, that's a good idea, but it's not a Flash story, it's a Rogue story. How is the Flash in this? And I was like, well, I started realizing like the Flash didn't need to be in it, but it's a Flash book. Like that's something you have to think about when you're working on these books is like, how is that a Flash story? How is that a Batman story? If their name's on the cover, how is it their story?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. So we put that to the side. And they were also, it's Rebirth. It's Rebirth. So we're reintroducing these characters at their core, right? And so they're like, if somebody's never read Flash before, but they're reading it because of Rebirth, or they haven't read Flash in like 10 years, you need to reintroduce the Rogues. So start there. Like, all right, cool, I'll reintroduce the Rogues. And so I didn't tell the Grodd story. And then when we did the Grodd stuff, the Perfect Storm, I was like, I'm never going to tell that story. But in 2020, the original assistant editor on The Flash, she reached out to me and she was like, do you want to do that story now, but do it as a Black Label book? And I was like, oh, that's actually a time where I was like, I don't know, because I was still writing. I was writing the end of Flash at the time. And I was like, I don't know, maybe, And like a week later, I was like, wait a minute, hell yeah, I want to do that. Because then I could hear it. Because once I could hear Snart's voice in my head, I was like, oh, no, I know how to do it. I know how to do it.
Now, obviously, I don't know how it's going to end, but to me, it seems like it could be one of those perennial, like, the Dark Knight Returns for the Rogues, is what it seems like in a way. I mean, and I'm not trying to oversell it, but the book is really freaking good. The characterization, Leo Mack's artwork, oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah, dude. I've been really lucky with the artists I work with where it's like Leo Max, him, like you just let him run and he comes back with amazing stuff every time. Working with Gleb on Robin, it's like let that guy run. Howard Porter, Danny, all of them. Like I've been lucky that because I can definitely be a control freak about things.
What's that like reading DC books in the 90s and then being able to work with Howard Porter? What's that like?
Dude,
holy cow, right?
Yeah, like
that's crazy. Yeah.
Dude, he was one of my favorite artists when I was a kid because he was on the Ray, he was on Underworld Unleashed, and then he was on JLA, right? And you're talking about like I watched him ascend, because I was reading the Ray when he was on it. And I love that book. It was Christopher Priest was writing it, Like I love that book, and you see him like prime. And I was just, dude, like one of my favorite artists. And I actually met him. Again, we were talking about this thing about meeting people. I met him at San Diego Comic-Con, I think 98. And he drew a drawing of like, might have been 99, but he drew a drawing of Rail for me and a drawing of Hourman for me. And like that Hourman, the robot Hourman.
From the 853rd century.
Yeah, dude.
I love that one.
I still have that whole Tom Payer. I still have that whole Tom Payer run. It's freaking
do you really?
awesome. Oh my goodness,
dude! I sold my comic book collection in 2008, and sometimes I regret it, like every once in a while. But I'm out of single issues. Like now, I still buy stuff now. But yeah, dude, I sold my like crazy massive collection that I had. I sold it, and I regret it every once in a while. But anyway, Howard, dude, like he came up. Like when I was at DC, we were doing Justice League versus Suicide Squad. We were trying to figure out how the artists were going to do what, and they brought out Howard Porter, and I was like, dude, I love Howard Porter, but he had been working on stuff like Scooby Apocalypse and Justice League 3000. Like I thought he was like Keith's guy, and he was never going to go anywhere else. And I was like, well, I would love to work with him, And so we got to work with each other on that, and then we just started talking, and then we worked on the Button together, like right after that, and then we just started being like, we started clicking, and then I was like, can you work on Flash? And they were like, yeah, we can bring him on a Flash. And Howard, who'd done Flash before, obviously, would have, like, he's knew the character really well and knew the universe really well. And so, like, we just clicked, dude. And, like, he's one of my favorite people. And I'll work with Howard forever. Like, he's one of those artists that I'm like, I will always, I mean, we did Deathstroke, we did Flash together. We did Deathstroke Inc. together. Now we're doing that Bane, like, One Bad Day, One Shot together. Like,
oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's like my guy.
That's one of my favorite Batman villains, so I'm so pumped for that. I'm glad you're doing it,
dude. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm curious what you're gonna think of it because like when they came to me and they were like, "Do you want to do the Bane one?" At first, I was like, "I don't know, man." So this actually is a moment where I said, "I don't know." This is why. Like, Vengeance of Bane is the best Bane one shot. Period. Right? Like that's the best Bane story. Like you read that one shot and you know everything you need to know about that character in that one issue, right? And so I was real like, man, how am I going to find my way into this? Because if part of the goal of those books is to tell like the best standalone story you can tell for that character, something that touches on who they are, their origin, but also is things you can play with later. But ideally, you just want to tell like an iconic story about that character. And I was like, dude, it's right there. Like it's Vengeance of Bane. Like that's the one. And I was watching, I'm not going to tell you what my story is yet. It's too early, but I was watching WrestleMania, which I have not watched WrestleMania in a while. Like I used to be hardcore and then I kind of fell out of a little bit. Now I kind of watch Royal Rumble and just WrestleMania. I watch AEW every week, but when it comes to the WWE, like I was hit or miss. And so I sat down to watch WrestleMania. Like it was one of those nights where like everybody was gone. My wife was gone. The kids were gone. So I'm like, all right. It's WrestleMania time. I'm sitting there by myself, and I was watching WrestleMania, and it was the very beginning, and Triple H came out and put his shoes down. It was night one. Right? So he came out, he put his shoes down, And,
oh, that's right. It's like a multi-night event now.
Yeah, it's 2 nights now, Saturday and Sunday. So he came out. Well, I'll tell you the whole Sunday got jacked for me, but basically Saturday he comes out, he puts the boots down, and I had my notebook with me. Because I have notebooks for every project because I have a Batman notebook, right? And it click. I was like, oh shit, I know the whole thing. I sat down, I was like, jog, like right now, sit down.
Nice.
Sunday night, WrestleMania got messed up for me because I was gonna watch it later. Like I had taped it, using the DVR. I was gonna watch it later. And I'm sitting there, I'm watching the beginning. Just starts. Like WrestleMania was night 2, just starts. And then a glitch happens in my DGR and it fast forwards to the last minute.
Oh no!
And so I watched the last minute of Rome. I literally was like, "All right, I'm out. Nope, I'm good."
Yeah.
Apparently, I watched. So I turned it off, and I'm. But I watch AEW every week, every Saturday morning. That's like my Saturday morning cartoon right now is watching AEW.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
a lot of friends of the channel are and members of the crew are big wrestling fans. I haven't been into it. I was big in of course the 80s and the early 90s. And then I got back into it during the Attitude Era, like The Rock, Stone Cold, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then I dropped out. I came back in when Daniel Bryan was starting to come up and the Shield broke apart, and but then I jumped. I was like, you know what? I read way too many comics. I watch way too much Star Trek. if you want to be a wrestling fan, that's like a 12-hour a week commitment.
Oh, dude, are you a Star Trek fan?
Yes, I am actually.
Oh, dude, I used to go to Star Trek conventions in California when I was a kid. I used to go to Trekkie conventions all the time. Dude, there's no picture of it. There's no picture of it, but there is I went to one of those dressed up as a like dad or whatever with a little blue Next Generation.
Yeah.
You know, little science officer outfit, you know, or medical officer outfit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely.
What's
I've definitely
your
done
favorite Star Trek series? Next Gen?
Probably Next Gen. I don't know. It depends on the day. Because sometimes I'm like, because Next Gen, I started watching it maybe like halfway through the first season when it started airing. But Deep Space Nine was one I watched from the beginning, and I felt like I had some ownership of it, you know?
Right. Plus, they were telling that long form story, right?
Yeah,
I got Brian to watch DS9, but I haven't seen it in so long I can't talk to him about it, and he's really
I would come and go, oh, I just saw this part, and he's like, what?
Well,
so then I started,
The thing about DS9 is it's also like an age thing for me because it's like, you know, Next Generation is great. Like, don't get me wrong, I really like Next Generation, but I was like turning into a teenager, you know, at the same time as Next Generation starts, and so my interests are a little bit more like, oh, this is the one's a little darker and has crime in it. I'm going that way, you know. So I was hardcore into that. Like, I really like Deep Space Nine, but a lot of the TV show stuff, like I've watched maybe the first season of Discovery. I've watched some Lower Decks. I'm behind on everything else. I started watching the new one, like Strange New Worlds, late one night, and then I just was like, it's too late. I gotta go to bed. But like my favorite movies are probably like obviously Wrath of Khan, but then Undiscovered Country is fucking dope. Like that.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's a great. What's the line? It was like you don't understand Hamlet till you've read it in the original Klingon.
Yeah, so good, dude. So good.
I'm a big fan of the motion picture. Like that's still my favorite.
Oh yeah.
Star Trek
Have you watched the
new
movie one? The re-release they just did? Did you watch the re-release?
They just played it at our theater, but I didn't get a chance to go see it. It's the director's edition. And it's remastered, but it's on. I think it's still on Paramount Plus, so I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah, I might check it out. I think it is. I listened to the score maybe a week or so ago because I listen to scores all day while I'm working.
Nice.
And those two, like Wrath of Khan and Undiscovered Country, they come up on rotation a lot. But that one came up. It was the motion picture one, and I listened to that one, and I'm like, this movie is cool. Like, there's something about it. It's so heavily influenced by 2001, though. Like, they were heading that direction because they were like, if Star Wars is going this direction, we're gonna go that direction, you know. Yeah. But it's so cool.
And then in Wrath of Khan, they were like, you know what? Let's just go in this Star Wars direction after all.
But it's still Star Trek. I don't know. Like, Wrath of Khan still feels like it. But it's so crazy.
I hear people that they criticize it, and they're like, they got too Star Warsy with Nicholas Meyer. But I'm like, you know what, though? It still is Star Trek. Like you said, it's still, it's still dealing with some things that I think that Star Wars doesn't necessarily. Like, they're dealing with some real crazy stuff in a lot of those, like in Undiscovered Country, like basically talking about how like they're kind of racist and bigoted against the Klingons and like Kirk's whole like that.
Dude, it was so really fascinating because it was all about like the Cold War, you know, like they really went. I mean, and Star Trek has always been like a little political, but they big time went into that. It was very topical at the time. You know, you look at one thing I find fascinating about Wrath of Khan is how much Wrath of Khan as like a cultural like nerd moment is fascinating because think about this, like you have this big budget, like, you know, motion picture is one thing, but they're like, all right, that worked. Okay, it worked out on a level, but we're going to go hard on this next one. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to get that villain from that one episode.
Yes.
From 20 years ago. We're going to get that one dude from that one episode 20 years ago, and we're going to bring him back, and we're going to make him arguably like Star Trek's greatest villain in a movie. Yeah. Like, that kind of stuff now when we have all the stuff that's happening with Marvel, where Marvel is like, yo, we're going to bring back all this stuff. Or even like the Flash movie where like, we're going to go back and get Michael Keaton, which is a bigger deal because Batman 89 was like the biggest movie ever, you know? These big moments. But that kind of nerd, like Easter egg, only the real fan is going to get it stuff. Star Trek 2, dude. Like I feel like somebody could tell me if I'm wrong on this. I feel like that's the first time something like that had ever happened, where franchise was like, "Yo, we're gonna go back to this thing that's like 20 years old and make it into a big deal." Like what else is like that?
Yeah, you're probably right, 100% there. Like,
like what was
I can't think of anything coming to mind.
Yeah, what was the thing that they were like fandom? We're gonna like hardcore make the, you know, like the fandom be happy.
maybe like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, but that was so long ago, you know. And like, who? That's the first cinematic universe, by the way, is Universal Horror. That's just gonna say. Okay. All right. Well, Josh,
Dark Crisis. Yeah, if you have any more Dark Crisis questions, we can cover it before I take off. My wife.
All right, because I was about to be like, we could talk to you for hours because we've been a fan of your work. Now you're a friend of the show. Now we're a fan of you. This has been great. We hope we can have you back sometime so we can we can talk for hours. Anytime you want, you're invited, bro. Just let us know.
Oh, thanks,
we'll set it up. But so Road to Dark Crisis is coming next.
That's next week, right?
Is that all reprint material, or is there some new stuff?
No. So Road to Dark Crisis is all original stories. We knew that, there were certain things we had to put on the table, right? Like we had to answer, why did John not immediately go to Nightwing and be like, you're in charge? I needed to answer that immediately. So we answered that. We answered like, who is Pariah? What's Pariah been up to? We answered a little bit of like teasing how the villains are kind of like starting to work together. And then we had a Flash story in there. Like I had like little things. There's a Hal Jordan Aquaman story in there. We just wanted to like touch on little stuff of like where these things were to get you to Dark Crisis number 1. Because I could be a bit of a continuity junkie sometimes. But if you read Dark Crisis number 1, you've read nothing else. You're gonna be good. Like you're gonna get what you need. I just wanted to put some pieces on the table, and then also next week is Shadow War Omega. And Shadow War Omega, you'll see like really ties directly into Dark Crisis. Like it picks up,
when I started piecing together the idea of the Secret Society and Deathstroke and how Deathstroke Incorporated started, I was like, oh my goodness, it's all connected. It's tying in, bro. This is so awesome.
If you saw the whiteboards in my office, like, that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme of Charlie, like trying to like, dude, that is me. That is me. Like I have whiteboards all over the place in here. I went to one of the editor's house yesterday and I took all the whiteboards with me and I had them sprawled out and I knew I looked like a crazy person because I was like, and then this happens over here and this happens over here and this leads to this over here. And I was like, but like all those books like Robin, Deathstroke, Batman, Justice League Incarnate, Infinite Frontier, all of that stuff was like building to Dark Crisis, like all of it. And there's all kinds of Easter eggs. There's all kinds of foreshadowing in there. Like, I think when Dark Crisis is done, I'm going to sit down and do some kind of document or blog or something, article, whatever, and be like, look at all this stuff that was here that we were like teasing out this whole time. And like all of this stuff really does come together. And there's moments like, there's stuff in Dark Crisis that I think people will be like, oh, he's referencing this thing. That was connected to this too. And I'm like, yes, it was all connected to this. To build to these moments and the stuff that we're doing in Dark Crisis that I think people will be excited about, especially the ending. I think there's a lot of really cool moments throughout Dark Crisis. I think people who are DC fans will get pumped about because that was really my goal. Is like I wanted to make sure it was accessible to people, but I want to make sure the people who are like the hardcore people that are going to the shop every week that they're the ones that are like getting this reward for sticking with it and for reading this big story.
Yeah, I've been loving the entire build up. Justice League Incarnate was great. Infinite Frontier. I love Darkseid. I love Captain Carrot. I love Superman of Earth 23. So I've been down, right? I love that you're threading all this stuff from everything else, and I'm really, really pumped. And y'all, listeners, viewers, I want you to know I've read the first issue of Dark Crisis. It is Robbie approved. I love it because I know a lot of people out there in this YouTube community, they have their anticipation of what this story is supposed to be, and they are wrong.
It's like, not. Yeah, dude. Yeah, there's a weird game I've been playing where I'm like trying to like mess with people's expectations where people are like, oh, I know what's going to happen. And I'm like, do you though? Do you though?
Yeah. They don't. And I'm very excited to see how this unfolds. So Joshua, thank you so much for being here, bro. We really do appreciate it. So Road to Dark Crisis next week. Dark Crisis in what, 2-3 weeks? What is
2
that?
weeks. 2 weeks. Yeah, dude, it's here. It's gonna be here like that. Yeah, is that right? Yeah, I think it's like 2 weeks. It's a 7. It's gonna sneak up on me, dude. It's gonna be a nutty time, but yeah,
it's coming up and it's coming up fast, and I am pumped. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Brian? It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was great. Thanks for coming.
Right on. All right. Well, we're going to let you go because obviously you have the future of the DC universe to plan, and me and Brian got to plan how we're going to try to get through all of Stranger Things over the weekend. So anyway,
dude, good luck.
Yeah,
all right. Thanks, guys, so much.
Y'all have a good one. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, PCP Army Station, and the last